Okay, welcome back to the show. Let's talk now about some video game news. There's not a ton, like we said, but it's important to note. So up first, let's talk about Guilty Gear.
Yep.
Exard.
So they announced another new character that is going to be available on the home version, which is Leo Whitefang.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, that's all about as much as I know about him.
I mean, you can see what he looks like.
Yeah,
he was in a trailer recently.
It looks like he carries two giant blades in the shape of crosses.
He looks, I mean, I feel like he's supposed to look like a lion, maybe.
I'm assuming.
Yeah, I assume that's
his name is Leo.
Right.
Yeah,
Right. Which he does, I guess.
Right. And the best. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
He apparently is one of 3 governing kings of the allied kingdom of Illyria. Yes.
That's way more story about Guilty Gear than I knew about, actually.
Oh yeah.
But apparently, like, I just think it's really funny because, you know, Tasty Steve, he was super hype about this character.
Right.
He's like, I am 100% gonna play this
Right.
character. And of course on Twitter he keeps doing all those Leo tweets, retweets and stuff like that.
I didn't even think about that.
Yeah, so it seemed like it kind of...
That totally fits.
I feel like someone needs to make a parody account now called Leo Tweets with, like, his dialogue and, like, keep adding at Steve and stuff. I think...
I like it.
Pretty amazing.
I like
actually.
it. Yeah. Steve is definitely the kind of guy who just looks at a character and he's like, "That's my character."
Yeah.
And he totally goes with that. Like whenever that's happened, he's like, "That's my guy," and he sticks with it.
Steve is one of the players who wouldn't put 2 people on the same Marvel team in Marvel vs. Capcom 3 because they were enemies in the comic.
Yeah.
He was like, they would never work with each other,
Yeah.
and so he wouldn't put them.
Right.
He is a man who respects the lore.
He's like one of the most respectful of lore people that I know in fighting games.
Yep, absolutely. So, no, but I mean, this game, the trailers that came out. So YouTube now is 60 frames per second, right?
Yeah.
So some videos are getting upgraded. I don't know if they're doing a behind the scenes upgrade or whatever they're doing, but I can't wait to see some 720 or 1080p 60 frame direct feed capture footage of Guilty Gear. I'm like so hype about that right now.
I don't really care about this 60 frames thing.
It looks really beautiful though.
I just don't notice it, to be perfectly honest. Yeah.
So you don't...
It's not that I'm saying it's bad at all.
Yeah. But I mean, like, so there's some games that when you
me.
play, you don't notice when it drops from 60 to 30 frames.
I don't think I've ever... No.
You know what? I bet you've noticed, but you didn't know that's exactly what's happening.
Yeah, maybe, but...
Yeah, because there's some games when the slowdown gets really intense, it gets a little choppier. That's when the frame rate drops and stuff.
I mean, if it's down like below a certain threshold, like of course I can see it. But I don't know. Again, I'm not saying it's bad. It's just it's probably my own problem.
I mean, like, I'm gonna totally agree with you on, like, you know, I can totally understand. Like, I would just be like, you know what, 60 frames, 30 frames look totally different. But if you told me, like, the difference between 1080p and these new 4K TVs or whatever like that, that's just garbage. So.
Well, I mean, I guess I can kind of see that, because I went to some show, I forget what it was now, maybe it was CES or something, and I saw those TVs, and they were, like, gigantic TVs that were 4K, and it was like a window. So it was like that's the quality. Like, I was just looking through to like whatever mountains were on. It was just like a straight up window. So I mean, you know, I can notice it a little bit, but for some reason, like the 60 thing, I'm not fast
enough. The frame
enough.
per second, huh?
Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know what to
Okay.
I don't know.
Well, okay, so, but yeah, Leo is coming out there. Dude, I mean, the crazy thing to me is that every time they've announced new characters for the home console, they're brand new characters. So they've announced Sin, they've announced Efelt, and now they've announced Leo.
Right. I know the question.
Where's the old characters? I mean, okay, if you're not going to give me Johnny, just give me Biken at least. Please, just give me Biken.
What if Leo plays like Johnny?
I would be sad, because then that probably means that Johnny is not coming back.
But do you care about the character Johnny, or do you care about the playstyle?
Yeah, it's kind of both at this point.
Okay.
Yeah, it's kind of both at this point. So
okay.
Yeah,
okay.
But man, I want Johnny in that game so badly. So
I feel like that'll happen, but we'll see.
I mean, I've mentioned this before, that like that pachinko machine art that they had for Guilty Gear. There's a Johnny in there, and he's got a mustache. It's clearly for Exard, so they're clearly thinking about it or working on it or something like that. They better put him in there. I'd be so angry.
Yeah. I mean, I was just thinking, like, if a character shows up in like the cutscenes of this game, they have to have totally made that character.
Oh,
you see what I mean? Because since it's all in 3D, right? They're not just like drawing Johnny or Leo that he was in a trailer and now he's playable. If a character is in a trailer, like they've spent the time to make a 3D model.
Yeah, that's true. Because all the cutscenes are the 3D graphics. Yeah.
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
Okay.
He hasn't showed up in anything. But we'll see. Anyway, let's talk about Virtua Fighter.
Yes. So they are updating Virtua Fighter 5.
Yes.
They're doing a new version, which is version B.
Yeah, Virtua Fighter 5 Final Showdown version B.
Yeah, so that's actually I'm assuming in Japan there's still a huge number of people who play this game.
As far as I know, it's still popular.
Right. I mean, obviously the Virtua Fighter Tekken much more successful in Japan than they are in the States.
Right.
So they're actually coming out with a new version, which is coming out when? In
March. It's coming out in the arcades in March. So it'll have balance tweaks, to the existing cast. And the name's starting to get a little long, starting to get a little Super Street Fighter 4-y.
Best is still that Dead Rising. You saw the Dead Rising downloadable DLC pack, right?
Oh, I did.
Yeah. It was just like the most ridiculous name.
That was on purpose, though.
Yeah. Of course. I have to look up. Let's see here. It's Super Ultra Dead Rising 3 Arcade Remix Hyper Edition EX Plus Alpha Prime.
Yeah, it's good. I remember it.
That's pretty amazing. Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
So look for that. Look for Virtua Fighter. Let's talk about Skullgirls.
Oh, dude, it looks like Jibbo's in our chat here.
How about that? We talked about Hugo earlier and you missed it.
Yeah, that's right.
So there's some Skullgirls stuff. A little bit more stuff on Beowulf. He's getting a little bit more completed.
More progress on him.
Yeah.
Every time they do Rebel Up at Super Arcade, they always Mike Z always brings a new version of the game and shows the progress. So you can always see the progress of all the characters that he's doing, and lots of interesting things about Beowulf. Like he's kind of a grappler, but not like a. Basically, what Mike told me is he really wanted to bring back the final fight, kind of pick him up, walk him around, beat him up, throw him kind of mentality. So his throws, he literally picks you up and like holds you, and then he can punch you, or you can forsake that and walk around and for positioning, and then end with the big throw.
I like that idea.
And apparently he has like some sort of audience mechanic where like if the audience is more hype, he gets more powerful or something, because like I think one of his buttons makes him do like the Hulk Hogan thing where he like listens, and the longer you hold it, the more he gets, and he's got a microphone drop or something like that. Yeah.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
I have to say. Definitely. I voted for him back in the day. I voted for him.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. I totally voted for him.
Yeah.
Oh, speaking of Skullgirls, I should probably mention that on 86th.com. So they teamed up with Skullgirls, and they had done a Skullgirls t-shirt every week, right? Once every week. That's ending now, so they're going to stop that. They're not going to make any new Skullgirls shirts, and I think until the end of February, all the past shirts are now available for sale.
Oh, okay.
So if you missed one, or if you want to go back and collect a bunch of them before they're gone forever, you have an opportunity to grab a couple of shirts. So
one thing that I also really like that Lab Zero has done is that PlayStation 3 to PlayStation 4 stick driver.
Yeah.
You heard about that? Yeah, they made a driver that allows you to play PS3 sticks on a PS4.
Yep. And it's going to work. I mean, it's not going to work natively.
Yeah.
But it'll work if Skullgirls is the game that you're playing.
Right.
Not only that, but they made it available free.
Right.
They just put it out there and said, any other fighting game, if you want to use this driver, go ahead.
I really like that. It's so cool.
Yeah.
Because it's, I don't know, I feel like that's like, it fits very well with that game and that development, that developers like kind of how they handle things.
Yeah, I'm wondering what's happening with Fighting is Magic. Because you remember when they got to a certain point in their Kickstarter, in their Indiegogo campaign, that they were going to give their engine to the Fighting is Magic group for free, and I think they got to that point. So I think they gave them that. So I'm wondering if that's actually going on. So, but yeah, I don't know.
Okay, all right. Well, that's it for that.
Yeah.
That's all the news we have.
Okay. We can talk a little bit about what was going on Twitter.
Yeah,
today.
let's just jump into that. Sure.
Okay, cool. So today on Twitter, I don't know the particular circumstances. I asked about it, and so this information that I got could be totally wrong because Twitter is not the most reliable of news sources.
Sure.
But I heard somebody at a Smash tournament recently was using the ice climbers, and for some unknown reason, I guess when they start landing the wobbling, the infinites, people boo, right?
Yes, I feel like I've heard that the Smash scene hates that.
Yeah, and so people boo, and apparently they booed a player, and then afterwards, I don't know what happened with it, but then all of a sudden it spurred a lot of this conversation about, like, should audiences be curbed, what is too much, and all this stuff. So I don't know if they even started getting more personal than that.
Okay.
Because if it's just booing, it's one thing, right? But if it starts getting personal, it's another thing, right? So, I mean, just this little side point, I always think that it was funny that Wobbles himself wrote that blog article where he said he felt like he did well at EVO 2013 because every time he landed the wobbles, the audience started going crazy and cheered for him.
Hype, right?
I know, right? Like, they were so happy for him, and so it just, like, spurred him on, to play, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, so apparently, so then the question came up, and I started talking about it. I was, basically, my response is, if you can't handle booing, you got to deal with it, right? Because that's just the way it works. Because I do not want to silence the crowd.
Nope.
I do not want to put them in soundproof booths.
Nope.
I don't want to do any of that stuff, right? And then other people started bringing up to me, like, well, what is too far, right? Like, there have been situations where a player has practically been yelling in PR Rog's ear before, like the crowd control wasn't very good.
Right.
So that's obviously a problem. If they get personal, it's a problem, kind of thing like that. But so here's the main question. There are some people who maybe can't handle the booing, right?
Okay.
And let's just say that they are a great player, but because of that, they are discouraged from playing the game and they leave the scene.
Okay.
And it would be a shame to lose a strong player like that, right? What's your opinion on that? So, I mean...
There you go. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, basically I said that, in my opinion, if someone can be affected that much by the booing like that, I don't know how good they could have gotten in the end.
Yeah.
In a weird way, I kind of feel that way, and that could be just because of the arcade background that we're used to.
I'm sure that's part of it, but a lot of the arcade culture hasn't lived on, but that part of it definitely has.
Yeah.
And that's still going strong, and it's an attractor to people. That's like why some people get involved or why some people watch fighting games.
Yeah.
Is that interplay between the audience and the players and the players and the players and what goes on in the crowd. It's fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, and I always said, like, we're like football. We're football. We're not tennis.
Yeah.
When you hike the ball, it's not like...
Yeah. No. If the defensive team is the home team, you want to make it as loud as possible so that the offensive team can't hear the play call, can't hear the play count, and that there's that they screw each other up.
Right.
You're trying to throw them off their game.
And I mean, that's the one thing I will always give college basketball over pro basketball, is that when you watch college basketball games, the audience they are loud. They are deafening.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that passion is in there. So I just feel like that's just something you kind of have to deal with. You know what I mean? And so here's the thing. It's like, if you want to try to curb this, or if you want to try to make it so that it works better for people who don't deal with the booing so well, I don't even know if there's an option, really. You know what I mean? I honestly can't think of anything. And you know me, I like to sit around dreaming up all these crazy ideas, and this is one I can't think of a solution at all. Because like I said, I don't want soundproof booths.
No.
Right? Which I still think is funny that one Team Martin tournament that you went to, that they were in the soundproof booths, and they said that they could definitely hear the FGC. Because you guys all went there and were like cheering for him. They all heard you through the soundproof booth. It's so amazing.
Yeah.
But that, I don't want to do that. I don't want to like separate them like really far from each other or whatever like that. I mean, the only thing I can think of honestly is that the person doesn't like it's just got to wear really good headphones.
I think that's it. I think you put on some noise canceling headphones if you know personally that it's a big deal for you. There are people who, like you said, some people really like it. It's something that gets some players going. For other players, if there's a crowd, they have a tough time. Even if they're not booing, they can have a tough time. There's some players who just being on that stage, being on stream, even just competing in a tournament at all is tough.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anything to be done about that. In fact, I would really like it if other game communities recognized how important the crowd can be or should be. One thing that I really don't like about watching, League or Dota or StarCraft is that they are in these booths. Not all the time, even. I feel like League especially has been not doing that, but they are in there because the intention is to try to make it as if they were playing without a crowd.
Well, it's also because it's too easy to shout things.
Of course it is.
And warn people.
But that's what I mean. That you're playing. The goal is to try to play as if there were no crowd, as if you're just at home. You're playing online, and that's it. And they want all of the same strategies to be available. I would love it instead if they recognize that it's a different beast when it comes to live games. Imagine football, okay? Again, if the home team, when their team's on defense, couldn't get loud and couldn't purposely disrupt the offensive team. I mean, when the offensive team is in practice, or if it's a scrim that they're having and there's no crowd, that's never going to be an issue. And so they're going to have great communication. Their plays are going to go much better. They're going to have a lot more offensive success.
Oh yeah, but when it comes to a huge thing.
When it comes to a live game, it's a different thing. So I wish that other games would recognize that, because I would love to be at a League event, okay, and see that there's a gank coming, and scream about it, and I want that to have an impact. I feel like it's stupid that it doesn't have an impact.
I was just about to say, because one of the things about those games is there's a lot more secrecy in those games. Secrecy is kind of is a key component of those games. It's even something like Call of Duty, if you're running around the corner and the guy doesn't know that you're sneaking up on him, right? That's kind of part of the gameplay. Whereas in fighting games, everything is on the screen.
In fighting games, that's true. I mean, like, no offense, but when it comes to people talking about sports who don't play sports, I feel like they view it as as things where the information is already out there. Where, like, if you're in football, okay, like, if you're in your fan position, you can see everything that's going on. Right. It's, like, obvious. But for the players, that's not the case. You have very limited information as a player in a lot of different sports. Football, I played football and hockey, and I know that in those sports, if you have the full information, you're Wayne Gretzky. I mean,
eyes in the back of your head kind of thing.
The only people who have it are like that. Everybody else, it's a fight for how much you can see and where you can be, how much you can know at any one time. So to have the crowd, for example, here's a common thing in football. The quarterback gets the ball, and then he decides whether to hand it off to somebody running or throw it. And if he decides to throw it, the player who was supposed to get the ball still goes like this. And is trying to, like, fake people out. And you oftentimes see that he gets tackled. Because people, it's hard to see, you don't know. But
isn't, like, the one of the most, like, the Statue of Liberty play is, like, faking a throw or something like that? Or
there's a bunch of crazy stuff like that.
Okay. I don't watch a lot of football.
I know. So, I know. But the fans will be like, don't go after him. Like, he's not the guy. Pass. And having been to a bunch of college football games at a stadium where the fans are not far from where the action takes place, I was like 30 feet from there. Like, if we saw that, everybody would yell, pass! It's a pass! We're trying to influence things, okay? In a game where, in fact, information is not entirely available. We're trying to give information, so I want that same kind of thing. I think it's really interesting.
Right. So
I like that.
Here's a question, though. In a game like football, obviously, the players are really far from the audience.
I was 30 feet. I mean, that's not always the case, but in a lot of stadiums, look, if you're at the back, if you're in the nosebleed seat, it's a different story. But when it comes to people being front row, they're at most, 50 feet away. And they can yell, and they can... and they do.
So you can definitely hear that. Okay.
They definitely do that. So I think that that's a really interesting interaction. I feel like it builds audience or crowd fan participation and interest in the games. And I think that it makes for very interesting changes in strategy that I think could be really interesting. But instead they want to make it seem as if the game is just at home. You're just playing.
Right. Well,
I don't like that.
Here's another thing too. There's this one big difference also in games like League of Legends and stuff like that, is that the commentary is actually pumped into the crowd. So are the soundproof boots more for the crowd, or is it more for the commentary, you think?
I don't know.
Because obviously the commentary is probably a lot more analytical, and they could be like, hey, look, like especially in StarCraft 2, you'd be like, oh, he's building these units. You know what I mean? And you're not supposed to be able to know that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
People are saying, for example, yelling, it's a pass when plays happen in 3 seconds or less isn't going to make a difference. That's not true. Having played myself, I know that that's not true because I would be in that situation. I was a defensive player, okay? I was a cornerback and safety. And in that situation, I could hear what the crowd is yelling, you know? Like, of course. I mean, they're right there. Like, somebody's like right there. Of course I can hear it. So it changes how I play. And that's accepted in sports and in esports. It's not. I feel like, again, honestly, esports is sports for people who don't know anything about sports.
Look, so basically, I just think it might also be the soundproof boost might be more for commentators. You know what I mean? And maybe because in something like StarCraft, it would make a bigger difference. It just kind of bled over to League of Legends. Yeah. Because I don't think League of Legends is as important, right? Because it's not like I'm building these particular units or I'm doing anything like that. Really, the most secret is where you're placing wards, maybe, and like where you're trying to gank somebody or something like that. But I just don't think it's as much of an effect. So I could totally see soundproof boots for StarCraft because they're pumping the commentary into the audience. And I think that's one of the big difference between them and fighting games. You know what I mean? Because fighting games, we don't pump the commentators into the audience.
Right, right.
So yeah, I don't know.
Well, it's definitely true that playing at an amateur level where I played is not the same as playing at a professional level, for sure. But it still has an impact. I mean, you can see that it has an impact because teams, when they're playing at home, have an advantage. It's not in the same way as like in hockey. As much as I love hockey, the crowd doesn't matter as much as in football because you're not interrupting plays. But in football, you're like trying to screw as much as you can with the offense, and it really makes a difference.
Basketball is a huge one. Like basketball is a big difference. There are some teams that are like 90% wins at home and like 40 to 50% wins on the road. You know what I mean? And stuff like that. The home record makes such a big difference a lot of the times in basketball for a lot of teams. Okay. So there's definitely a lot to home court advantage in basketball. So
I think that you guys don't know anything about sports. To be perfectly frank. I think that's. Oh man. But if I don't, look, I'm no pro MOBA guy. I've played it a lot, but I'm no pro.
Right.
But I feel like my MOBA creds are probably better than some people's sports creds, relatively speaking.
Dude, your sports creds are better than my sports cred. I'll tell you that.
I mean, that's my opinion. I would love to see that this changes in strategy.
Right. I mean, so I mean, kind of back to the whole thing about like crowd heckling and all these things like that. I mean, I'm speaking as a person who actually does really bad when crowd heckles, right? I haven't really had a lot of people heckle me before. I've had people jokingly heckle because they just want their friend to win really badly and stuff like that.
I've been there too.
I actually have trouble in those situations because then I feel bad about beating them in front of their friends, and I start playing worse.
Yeah.
But I even play bad when people cheer for me. Like I was a Marvel game at the run back where Christian, ETR was just like, "Go James, you can beat him!" Blah blah blah.
Oh, I remember this.
And after I lost, I turned to him I'm like, please stop. Like it actually makes it harder for me. Like it's weird. It's like a distraction because I pay attention to that more than I pay attention to the game. So
that's fine.
But yeah, I don't know, dude. Like I just feel like booing, heckling, as long as it doesn't get personal, as long as they don't get personal, and as long as they don't get in your personal space.
Yeah, the space issue I totally agree with.
The space thing, like I said, there was one time where someone was basically yelling in PR Rod's ear, and he literally turned around and was like, "Can you shut up?" Kind of a thing, right? So those kind of things, yes, for sure. If it gets to the point where it's about where they start yelling racial slurs or gender slurs or any sort of things like that,
for sure.
absolutely, yes, TOs need to do something. And in fact, if you're in the audience and like at the front where you know the players can hear you and you hear someone throwing out those kind of slurs, you need to tell them to turn and, you know, shut the hell up. Like that's part of what you need to do. Audience does have to kind of police themselves a little bit at times like that. But just generally for the most part, I just don't know what you can do about booing. And it's, to me, it's, and like I even pointed out, you know, there's the story of Momochi changing from Yundam to Cody because he got booed.
Right.
It's part of it. Justin, dude, in Marvel 2, he got booed so badly.
People hated it. Yeah.
He was booed constantly. And the funny thing is, I actually I tweeted him, and I was like, you should ask Justin Wong about what it's like getting booed, because he gets booed all the time. And someone's like, yeah, I was really surprised that people cheered for him in Ultimate Marvel 3 at EVO. And he was like, pick lower tier characters.
Yeah.
I mean, look what happened with Marn when he went to Dudley.
Right.
Everyone started cheering for him, dude. You know,
right.
it's really funny.
For sure. I think that's true.
Yeah, and Broly Legs even mentioned in the chat a little bit earlier, he said in the Smash community, a lot of times booing comes down to the characters that you're playing. So apparently some characters are just super not popular or something like that.
Yeah.
So it might be a different atmosphere, different kind of mindset that the Smash community has, but I hope they don't silence anything. And I saw Prague, he was like, no, like, you have to deal with the booing. That's just the way it works, so.
Skelestream says it's a great idea to put the result of games in the hands of crowds rather than the skill of players. In short, that is kind of what I want. That I do think that would be really interesting. And of course, it wouldn't really play out like that. It's just the strategy changes for the players.
Yeah.
What is possible changes. That's true. But I think that's very interesting.
And not only that, but there are players like a Michael Jordan, like a Kobe Bryant, like a Reggie Miller, who feed off of the boos.
Right. Yeah.
The more you boo them, and that just kind of shows their strength, their mental strength.
I like that.
You know what I mean? So like. I mean, Reggie Miller, what the stuff that he did at the Madison Square Garden, right. You know, choking things, yelling at Spike Lee and stuff like that. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
That's just, I mean, he fed off of that. So it can backfire. It's not something that's a definite weapon. You know what I mean? So, yeah.
Well, all right. I guess that's enough of that.
Okay, sure. Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about our top 10 rankings on the Esports Max ratings that are coming out pretty soon. So.
Sounds good.
All right, we'll be right back, guys. Where's my XSplit? There it is. Let's do this.